Nordic Noir Finland rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä.
Hyvää vuorokauden aikaa, joka tässä vaiheessa taitaa oikeasti olla tällä hetkellä iltapäivä. Tervetuloa ihan ensimmäiseen live-haastattelutilanteeseen, jota meillä on Nordic Noir Finland podcastin puolesta ilo ja kunnia saada olla pitämässä. Mun nimeni on... mutta mun nimeni, sillähän ei ole mitään väliä, koska vieressäni istuu Mäksä. Ristimä nimeltään Mika Mäkelä, mutta hän tottelee ainoastaan nimeä Mäksä.
Hyvää vuorokauden aikaa, ja hän on siis Markus Asunto.
En tottele mitään nimeä.
Kyllä. Ja me teemme tästä myös tietysti podcast-jakson, joka sitten julkaistaan ennen joulua tässä Suplassa. Ja meillä on toinenkin vieras tulossa. Hän on mielenkiintoinen henkilö, mutta niin on myös ensimmäinen haastateltavamme numero 1, number 1, numero uno from Sweden. Welcome, Denise Rudberg.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Denise, unfortunately, we're a bit rusty in Swedish.
I was just about to say the same, but I'm so rusty in Finnish as well. Yes.
You could not sell me behind my back in Swedish, but perhaps we could sell Max in Swedish. but as we're trying to steer clear of human trade and human trafficking, so we should probably stick to English.
Yes.
And first of all, I suppose it would be a good idea for you to introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Denise Rudberg. I'm from Sweden, Stockholm, and yes, I'm a writer. I've been writing over 30 books, I think, I was starting out as a writer in Sweden at the year 2000, so I've been published for 21 years.
That's great. That's like...
So I think I'm up to 34 books or something.
Yeah. Maybe this is embarrassing question, but are you famous? Are you a good writer? How good your books are?
I'm not so famous. I mean, if I go out like this on the streets in Stockholm, some people will recognize me. But if I go out like I usually am, in pants that are adjustable waist and big sweaters and the hair back and no makeup, nobody will recognize me. For obvious reasons.
So you can go in peace.
Absolutely. I'm not Camilla Läckberg in that way because she's a very famous writer. But I've been. But I think if you're reading books, you know who I am.
Yeah. Didn't you have a TV show with Camilla Läckberg back
I
in
did.
the day?
Yes, exactly. It was called Läckberg and Rudberg. It was probably one of the worst TV shows ever regarding literature. We were so bad TV hosts, but we did our best. We were tired. Mothers with small children, we didn't get enough sleep. We were, miserable in our marriages, and
That actually makes it sound even more interesting. So I'll probably find it from YouTube somewhere.
Yes, you can find it. Yes. Yeah.
Well, actually, I was trying to ask that. How are your books doing?
Yeah, they are at this very moment doing very well. My latest book was released on Thursday the last week, and now it's actually number 1 on every chart in Sweden.
Wow.
And it's like every chart in audiobooks, ebooks, physical books, of course, which are still the most important format. So yeah, I'm very happy yesterday.
Didn't they actually? Congratulations, by the way. Didn't they actually make it to number 1, like in being released in the middle of the week? So even after 2 days after being released.
Yeah. So yeah, number 1 in just 2 days. It's fantastic.
So all the Swedish people have been hanging on the edge of their seats in order to be able to get their hands on ears and whatever particles of their body on the latest part of Denise Rudberg's literature. So congratulations, that's just mighty.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Well, let's go a little bit deeper into your books and your production. We are familiar with the latest 2 books. So you've been previously written both chick lit
Yes.
and elegant crime books.
Yes, correct.
Your latest series is about the women in war.
Yes.
And is it correct that the characters in the Liittolaiset, so in English counterparties series, it's loosely based on your grandparents?
Yes, that's correct. They are based on my grandmother, my father's mother. She was working at the Air Force from 1939 until her retirement in 82. And she was part of the, undercover work during the Second World War in Sweden. And also my biological grandmother and my mother's mother she was escaping from Finland, not from Finland, Estonia. So she escaped from Tallinn with my my uncles. And then my mother was born in Sweden later on. So, and then I had the second grandmother, which is, she was helping my biological grandmother because she was, by herself with 3 kids. So I had 2 grandmothers on that side as well. So these 3 are based, the characters are based on these 3 wonderful women.
Okay, and here we are, our generation, complaining that we have had to stay in the couch for a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. They had some work to be doing.
Could you tell a little bit more deeper about your latest Liittolaiset counterparties series? We are not trying to ruin the story, but explain a little bit what's going on in the book.
They're actually trying, they are getting hands-on information that there would be some operation done, a huge operation, but they don't know where the operation is going to be held, between which countries, and the operation that is actually searching for is the Barbarossa, I guess you all, especially in Finland, you know everything about that.
Yeah.
And also because this group of people that were working for the Swedish government, they were actually they were code breakers. They were the same kind of headquarters as in Bletchley Park in England. They were cracking the Enigma code.
Yeah.
We had the same in Sweden, and that was based on Karlaplan, where I live, actually. And you had the same quarter here in Finland, and the Swedish and the Finland authorities worked together on these code crackings business. And later on, we're gonna, in this series, we're gonna follow when the Swedish people from this headquarter were actually going over with the boats to get the Swedish signal, the code crackers over to Sweden because, this Operation Stella Polaris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are 3 ladies.
Yes.
Elisabeth, Iris, and Signe.
Very different women.
Very different, yeah. And well, I have a favorite character. Would you guess which one was my favorite character?
I think it's Signe.
No, it's Elisabeth.
It's Elizabeth. Oh, okay. Okay, you're a man. I understand, yeah. My grandmother was a very interesting woman. She was, as I told you, working at the Swedish Air Force. She was the only, one of the few women in the department. And she was actually called in to one of the generals and said, if you want to stay and keep your job, you have to cut your hair off. Because the guys in the financial department, they cannot handle themselves when you walk by. So you have to cut your hair in a short, practical, cut instead. And she did that just to please her boss and to keep the job. But in the book, I gave my grandmother some attitude. She had a kind of attitude actually as well when she was living, but the times were different then. It's 75 years ago.
And she was red-haired, and it was about the color of her hair. And
yeah,
stuff,
she was standing out, and she was like that as well. Even when she was my grandmother, she was wearing a lot of makeup. She was having a loud voice, and she was eating men for breakfast. And I get that from her. Yeah.
What did you have for breakfast today? Who did you have for breakfast
Yes,
today?
exactly.
Yeah, I found it story of those, of course, interesting three ladies, and it was kind of a grow story of your life and about the relationships. And for me, as a man, I needed some action, a little bit more.
Yes.
But I can understand why it wasn't there. But did you have any kind of feelings, or was it possible to actually have more in deep about the coding and about some action things? Because I think you had more stories behind, but you couldn't tell those.
No, because I wanted to focus on the women, and also wanted to focus on the women's stories about their day-to-day life, sort of. There will be some more action in the fourth book, though, because then, like my grandmother, she was actually traveling to both Germany during the war and Amsterdam with a locked briefcase, and this is also what's going to happen in there. And going to Berlin during these times were pretty complicated, so it's going to be some action. But I understand. So I was trying to deepen the characters very much with their disabilities and their relationships, and so I think it's pretty necessary for the women to get their voice. Because we have seen so many movies, so many series, so many books written about men during the war, but we have not really, touched the women during these times.
That's quite true. We've sort of had we've had the soldiers and we've had the strategical blokes.
Yes.
But not so much the women. So it's very interesting to.
I saw this series on Netflix, the Finnish movie about the Finnish Winter War.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called. It's extremely long. It's an extended Netflix movie. It was a movie first.
Was it Tuntematon sotilas, the unknown soldier?
Exactly.
Yes.
Which is one of the best series on Netflix ever, I can say.
Right.
But there was not so many women in it. But the women that you saw were fantastic. But the characters were amazing.
Yeah, it's actually it's kind of a classic book that everybody reads in Finland.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that I've only just started it myself, and I was surprised by the amount of comedy in the dialogue of so that the characters they're extremely funny, and then still going to that horrible situation of warfare.
Yes.
So that's. But yeah, and I think that in the latest in the version available in Netflix at the moment, there are they've tried to sort of dig up the female characters, but still in the original book, as the characters they really aren't there, so they can't be present too much in the movie either. But yeah.
And this is kind of what I realized when I was starting writing about this is like code cracking is pretty introvert. It's like it's not a lot of action doing code cracking. It's like, oh, do you have the numbers? Yes, I have the numbers. Okay, end of story.
Yeah.
It's like
any idea what they would mean?
And I was really trying, because there was this series on Netflix called The Bletchley Circle.
Yeah.
And I was, oh my God, we're going to know everything about the code cracking, like the Alan Turing thing when he's cracking the Enigma machine. But also the Alan Turing movie with the Scotland Yard guy. it wasn't. It was more about his mental abilities and his awareness of, he was very ill and he had this fever and he was out of himself. It wasn't much about the code cracking, because you can't really tell a story about it. So it has to be something about it instead. But also we didn't have a lot of action. We had a lot of spies in Sweden during the war, but there weren't that much action. You had so much more action here. It was much more.
Yeah, it's called like war.
Yeah, I know that little thing.
kind of means that there's going to be some like. Even some unwanted action, I suppose.
But you also had this Finnish-inspired character, the Professor Svartström.
Yeah.
He's based on Morten Svartström.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yeah, he is actually a very interesting character in your books. Yeah, I had in my mind all the time when I was reading when they were trying to crack the code and making the machine, the imitation game.
Yes.
And it's a very good movie. And now my kids are teenagers, so they are allowed to watch it, and we actually even bought the DVD to watch it. But anyways, is it decided how many books this series will be?
It's going to be 10.
The counter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's going to be a TV series from SVT, the Swedish television.
Oh yeah,
okay.
that I just read about actually last night. That that they've actually like bought the unwritten books, which is always great when they buy unwritten books.
No, they actually bought 6, because the first season is book 1 to 3, and the second season is book 4 to 6.
Right.
Because they need more in the episodes. So, from the beginning, I was actually thinking that the series would end in 1964, but the time are going so slow, so I'm actually going to end in 45.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to make it in 10 books. So this is going to be 10 books during the Second World War in Sweden and Finland. So.
Often in wartime fiction, behind the books and behind the stories, there's a huge amount of solid historical foundation, and more often than not, it has been like thoroughly researched, and there's been like the author has had to breathe a good amount of dust to actually do it. Can you tell us something of your historical foundation and the research process that was involved in creating these books?
Yeah, we had a wonderful source in Sweden. Both the newspapers, Dagens Nyheter and Svenska Dagbladet, are having the archives digital. So you can, if you're a, what do you call it, when you prenumerant? Yeah, when you're a subscriber, you have, the access to the historical papers from 1864 and on. So I'm actually, so far, I've been reading all newspapers from in April 1940 until so far December 41. So I'm, going through all the papers, because the newspapers, they are so interesting. Even, the ads for, today you can buy, extra price on this dresses, or some man is asking, I lost my dog. Have you seen it? Or it's a very historical. You can really see everything in front of you when you read the newspapers. There's so small stuff that you pick up, and also for me, it was very interesting to see what they didn't write, because Sweden were pretty much, we were held tight by the Germans regarding what we were supposed to, write in the Swedish newspaper, especially Dagens Nyheter. So it was this huge accident outside Öland, and then in the newspapers they said it was 12 wounded Germans, and that's about it. But there was about 200 killed. And so that's because I have because I have all the evidence now, but at that moment, that's what people were, the only information they got.
Yes, and all the while when you've been writing this the Kontrahenterna series, that you've also been continuing the Marianne Jidhoff crime series.
Yes, that's
which
correct.
take place in the Stockholm upper class, in which like everybody seems to have a secret. How is it really?
Every every person has a secret, I can tell.
Yeah. How is it really like keeping those two very, very different series alive at the same time?
The thing I have is like I already built up their universes, so they are very much alive. So it's like, you know, hanging out with just different type of friends. Because Marianne Jidhoff, we have known each other for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like a very, very old friend. And also with these people, you know, the characters in the Contrahands. I mean, I'm doing the 4th book right now. I'm getting used to them. I know their different language. So it would be a different thing if I was supposed to write 2 novels, 2 standalone novels every year. That would be impossible. But you know, using the same universe, the literature universe, it's a quite different thing. So it's possible actually.
Yeah. So you just actually you go and hang out with these people, and then you write about what
exactly.
went on.
Yes. Yeah. So, I'm going to Berlin on Monday for 3 days to do research, and I have this Israeli woman showing me the Jewish Berlin in the 30s and 40s, where they try to hide and all the secrets. So it's going to be very interesting. So for me, it's like this is like I'm living my dream. I can, for me, all the research is so interesting to be able to indulge.
I'm not sure, are you familiar with the writer called Anna Ekberg?
No.
She is...
No, nobody really is.
She is pen name of 2 Danish men, actually.
Aha.
They wanted to have a Swedish female name because Swedish women...
So these are you two?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
now
we might have some relationship.
Something.
We might have some relationship of Danish guy, but that's underwear. But
the other one.
But they took the name Anna Ekberg because Swedish woman writers are so popular, and that's also, like you said before, you are number 1. But one thing I pick up. You think the real books are still very important for you?
Yes,
yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
But of course the audiobooks, they have risen, and I basically only listen audiobooks.
50% of my sales in Sweden are in audiobooks.
Okay, okay.
50% of the numbers.
Yeah.
Which is really bad for the economy for me.
Yeah, that's what we have heard.
Yes.
Yeah, that's same in Finland, and I think everybody knows it. Everybody should do something about it, but we don't have an answer for that. But most of our interviews also discussing about the reader of the audiobooks. What is your relationship?
Very sensitive subject. In the Marianne Jidhoff series, we just changed the reader after 7 books, and the audio listeners are pretty mad. Actually, they are very mad. They are sending me really mad messages on Instagram and writing, pretty angry comments. And there were a lot of reasons why we had to change the reader, and I cannot really tell them about that because that's a business thing we're talking about. But we changed the reader to another very popular reader, so it was not a very huge step.
Yeah, it wasn't like you would have just like found someone else who nobody knows.
Exactly. No, this is a very talented reader. But I'm the same. I hate change. When I get to Kemp Hotel where I stay now, the last 5 times I've been here, I've been staying at the exact same room. And now when I get here, I get the room next to it. I said, no, I need 704. I cannot be in 705. It's very complicated. And they were like, but that room is much bigger. I was like, I know, but it's not the same as, So it's just a thing. I of course I can change room. I actually did now because I have to do that. But I eat the same breakfast. I'm very routine-based person, and most people are. And that's why you get irritated when they change something you like.
That's quite true. I've had my own share of experience with that, with like audiobook readers changing in mid-series just when you're used to somebody and grown to like the voice, and then all of a sudden there's a different person reading, and
also I think some books you're actually listening to just because of the reader, because you like the reader. Like we were talking before we started with Stephen Fry. I have this app when I can't sleep. It's called Calm. And there's this reader called Eric Bra, and he sounds like this. And I was like, I get full sleep in 2 seconds when he starts, telling me this sleep story. And if they would take him, out of that app, I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep. It's your fault. So, of course, I understand that people are upset, but you have to, consider, the reason for it.
Mm-hmm. In Finnish audiobook services, your books has been reader, at least most of the latest is Meri Nenonen, and she was new for me, but now I'm getting familiar to her, and she's doing good job.
Yes, okay,
in
thank
Finnish.
you.
Yeah.
I was it kind of stuck to my head the idea of those two Danish blokes, like using a Swedish female name for pen name, as it kind of like. It's not so long since women writers would have had to, especially if they wrote about like crime or stuff like that, they would have had to use pen names to disguise themselves as male.
Yeah, of course. I know. Yes.
Like it's kind of great to see it going the other way around these days.
Yes, I totally understand that.
What do you think about the women's situation? Well, let's say in Swedish. Authors word, how do you feel it? How the women are treated, and how are you doing in general?
In general, in Sweden, we are taking baby steps forward, but I'm getting pretty irritated though by the feminist envelopment the last years, because there's a thing nowadays that we say this is not our fight to take, and then you just say that okay, I will only fight for women are not supposed to be beaten by their husbands. So then I cannot take any response for race issues, children's issues, transgender issues. It's like you cannot just pick one subject. You have to be a human. And one of the what do you call it? The paths that the feminists are taking also. One feminist is telling the other feminist how a real feminist should be. And that's also so like, why? Because like 10 years ago, we had so much trouble finding liberal women telling them, saying that they were feminists. And now we have that, which is fantastic, because I don't think the political color really should tell if you're a feminist or not. You can be right-wing or you can be left-wing, but you should be a feminist, and no matter what. But I think that's kind of, it's getting more and more complicated, just saying I'm a feminist, and I don't know why it's so complicated.
It seems that whatever the value and whatever the cause, it seems that people have a good way of ruining things, like starting to argue about theory.
Yes.
And while people probably the wise thing to do, the prudent thing to do would be the sort of.
Yes, to be a nice dude,
yes,
sort of. Yeah.
Yes. Try to find just like ways to be a better human being.
Yes, it's very true, and it's and I kind of disappointed in that development sort of in Sweden right now. But I think it's social media is doing that a lot, and we are jumping out on each other. And I was pretty scared for a time also because Me Too was a fantastic movement. But there's also ways of doing things if you do it in the right justice system, and we have to rely on the justice system. Otherwise, the whole thing will fall apart.
Yes.
So you cannot really do, even if it's for a good cause. You have to be careful because you don't know. And we had this was a horrible experience with this man in Sweden called Benny Fredriksson. He was chief for one of the biggest theaters in Sweden, and he was accused in the Me Too, but he was found not guilty when they did all the analytics, everything around it. But he actually took his own life because of this. Yeah. And this is how you actually push people. If you hang them out and you are not in the courtroom, it's a pretty dangerous game to play.
It is. And
we have to change things, yes, but we have to do it proper, and we have to do it slower. Sadly, it's so, but otherwise we'll fall apart anyway.
Yeah. It seems that the social media, in particular, is kind of accelerating and working as sort of echo chamber for pretty much everything there can be, including stupidity, which is kind of sad.
Yes, but we have to take care of each other. Everybody has, like you said, you have to be a good human being.
Yeah,
it's the most important.
Yes. Moving on to the your crime series. The term elegant crime has been used about your books like many a time. And what would you say? How would you explain that term to someone who hasn't read your work?
Yes, I actually created the genre by myself because I was pretty irritated being called writing chick lit, because chick lit is not a very nice thing to say, because chick lit is actually chic as in girl literature. Many journalists actually think it's CHIC. So it's like chic as a chic dress or something, but it's chic as is in girl. And just saying no, that's just girls literature. It's like going back to the 50s. In Sweden, we had the books for the children, and you had the red. What do you call it? The red backs were for girls, and the green backs were for boys. So there was pretty clear, what book you should choose. And you felt kind of naughty when you picked the green one. And I think we came, away from that. So calling my books for chick lit is like, we had this, it was a huge thing on social media called Run Like a Girl. You know that? Because when you were a kid and when you were in gymnast or something at school, I said, oh, don't run like a girl. You throw like a girl. This is a girl's pitch. Like everything in between or after, if you put girl on it, it's something that is not quite so good. Yeah. So that's why I didn't want, when I started to writing crime, I didn't want me to be stabled like, okay, this is the chick lit crime. No, it's not. This is elegant crime. Yeah. So that's why I, kind of.
It kind of sounds like something that I would not step aside from.
No.
Even though I probably myself I'm always trying to find the noirest Nordic noir. Yeah. but I suppose that I might find something in the elegant crime genre as well.
I mean, I think literature should not be genderalized. It's like Absolutely. It should be for everyone.
But still, I'm going to ask about the genre that we represent, Nordic Noir.
Yes.
What is what does it mean for you, and what is your relationship for Nordic Noir?
Very good crime. I think it's realistic crime. Everything was just so well put together when you was like watching or reading Agatha Christie, or and you had the thrillers like Harlan Coben, and so I think it's the Nordic noir are pretty rough. It's pretty straight on. It's good storytelling. And it's pretty cold, and I don't mean only the climate, because of the winters, but it's more. I think it's pretty realistic and cold.
Yeah, the climate has kind of affected the writing.
I actually think so, but in some way, it's like we're not fussing up so much. We are, straight on.
Yeah. Swedish #1 author Denise Rudberg, what do you do when you do not write books? Or hang out with your imaginary friends?
Yeah, exactly, which is like 99% of my time. No, I love watching TV series. I watch pretty much everything.
All right, so your favorite show at the moment?
I was just checking the last episode of The Young Commissarium Wars.
Yeah.
Yes, which is like in Oxford, and it's in the 60s. I love it. It's very good. It's fantastic. And also the I don't know. It's in Finnish though. This is an English series. I watch a lot of British stuff. Polish I like a lot. Finnish also. We don't have so much from Finland so far, but the ones that are on Netflix I love. So yeah.
There probably will be more good stuff coming from Finland. So, but anyway.
Well, nice recommendations during the Christmas time, but it's coming, and our listeners have to write to the Santa Claus. So, what is your recommendation for the book? Not one of your own,
I promise.
but what you recommend for the readers? One book.
Okay, one book that is for this Christmas. Okay, anything from Anders de la Motte. He's one of my friends in Sweden. He's from the south of Sweden. Anders de la Motte, and he's writing. He's been a policeman for 8 years, and then a security chief, and then he's started writing. And he's a fantastic writer. So anything from him.
Okay.
And I know he's translated to Finnish as well. So
those are crime books.
Those are crime books.
Right.
Yeah, and they are really slow crime. They are, Swedish, the south of Sweden. When it snows a lot, and the snow has nowhere to go, so you are, in your house for stuck for 3 weeks sometimes, and that's also, changed. I think it's coloring his writing, I think.
Yes. It's been a huge pleasure.
But also, I think actually Camilla Läckberg's and Henrik Fexeus, The Box.
Yeah,
Box.
Yes, Max has just started listening to the box in Finnish, and we'll be talking about the box with a Finnish mentalist. We'll be talking about that with Pete Poskiparta sometime in the future.
Yes.
So it's something that I'm looking forward to checking out. And
I read half of it, and I think it's fantastic. We are very close friends, so I'm parting. But I have a lot of friends in the Swedish writers, so I'm going to be partying whenever I recommend.
Yeah.
Before, Markus, you are closing this, wrapping up. Next week, gonna have a chat with Luke Harding. Mm-hmm. Do you have any regards to him?
No, I don't. Please tell me. I'm very bad now, but.
Okay. Yeah. He's.
You were looking at me like.
No,
Go home.
Yeah. No. Just Yeah, he's this famous journalist from The Guardian who has written tons about Russia and about Russia being.
I'm so sorry.
Speak of the devil.
He didn't hear that.
Here. Okay, so yeah.
Maybe we're gonna cut this off.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna take me home. Take me home.
This is something we'll take out of the podcast.
Yes.
But my look to you will be the cover of this episode.
The gazillions of people watching online at YouTube Live have witnessed this moment.
yes,
Anyway, Denise Rudberg, it's been a huge pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much.
And I hope you enjoy your stay in Finland.
I love Finland, so I will.
That's great. That's great. And to our viewers, to our live viewers, we say we'll be back in just say like 15-ish minutes. And to our non-live viewers, listeners, I suppose they are called, we say hyvää vuorokauden ajan jatkoa.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
Nordic Noir Finland, rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä. Nordic Noir Finland rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä. Nordic Noir Finland rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä.
Hyvät Rosebud-asiakkaat, täällä alkaa ihan hetken kuluttua live-haastattelu erittäin mielenkiintoisen kirjailijan Luke Hardingin viimeisimmästä kirjasta. Eli jos teillä on hetki aikaa jäädä tänne vielä, niin tulkaa ihmeessä kuuntelemaan haastattelua Luke Hardingista.
Nordic Noir Finland, rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä. Nordic Noir Finland, rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä. Nordic Noir Finland, rikostarinoiden äärellä. Isäntinä Markus Asunta ja Mika Mäksämäkelä.
Hyvää vuorokauden aikaa. Olemme kirjakauppa Rosebuddin sivullinen Stakella ja Nordic Noir Finland toista kertaa live-haastattelee henkilöä. Elämme itse asiassa tällä hetkellä vuoden harmainta päivää, kun tämä tulee ulos. Minä olen Mäksä.
Ja minä olen Markus. Harmaata vuorokauden aikaa. Ja meillä vieraana tänään on hyvin suoraan Oxfordista Luke Harding. Welcome, Luke.
Thank you. Great to be here. Should we fist bump? I don't know. Do we?
Yes,
Yeah,
we should. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, we should fist bump. Yeah,
Yes,
we've done it.
we
Okay,
did.
thank you.
Your book, Shadow State, Murder, Mayhem and Russia's Remaking of the West, is known in Finnish briefly as the Espionage Network of Russia, Venäjän vakoja-verkosto. In it, you build a very, very bold, yet at least seemingly solid case in which Russia is using its intelligence service to make West weaker. Donald Trump's presidency and the rise of the far right and populism in Europe are probably the main accomplishments of Russia, not to mention a few of a couple of famous assassinations which have almost made Novichok surpass vodka as the national beverage of Russia. Perhaps it would be wise for you to ask you to put the main points of your book in a nutshell after this rather lengthy intro of mine.
Yeah, well, hello, and thank you. Very good to be with both of you. I mean, the intro is right, but to be clear from the outset, I'm not suggesting that Putin is some kind of villain from James Bond. I mean, I recently watched the last Daniel Craig movie. You've probably seen it as well. You know, he's not someone who sits on a kind of swivel chair with a white cat, pressing red buttons, making things happen in Helsinki, Paris, London, New York, and so on. That would be to give him too much agency, too much power. What he is, in my view, is a kind of classic KGB opportunist who uses the kind of methods and the tricks of the Cold War, where Finland, by the way, was right on the front line of events, and updates them for our shiny age of social media, of Twitter, Facebook, and so on. So it's a kind of hybrid, dark game that Putin is playing, and it involves hacking, it involves traditional murder, as you say. Sergei Skripal is the beginning of my book, the former GRU, Russian military intelligence officer who was poisoned with Novichok in a quiet city in provincial England, in Salisbury. So there's murder, there's hacking, but also the thing which I think is probably under-recognized, despite everything that's happened in the last few crazy years, is sort of political influence and sabotage, trying to influence our politics from inside and to push it in a certain direction. And that's very much true here as well in Finland.
Yes.
Yeah, there was lots of stuff, and I would say something for anyone. If you don't want to follow or you don't want to know Putin stuff, you might be curious about Trump or poison stuff or Boris Johnson. And
God help us. But yes, you're right.
But from my point of view, I didn't know Mr. Johnson before this much at all, and those relationships was very new for me and very interesting. And of course, the Trump stuff, Putin stuff, I kind of knew it, but not even close. So something for anyone. What you were doing with my iPad?
I didn't do anything. You did.
Maybe actually the KGB, KGB
Yes, probably
have been
somebody's
interfering with your iPad, or
some stacker is strolling up and down.
Or it could actually be your incompetence, one or the other.
Yeah, okay. Now I found it.
Okay.
Could you give us a brief definition of the terms shadow state and mafia state?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I could just sort of scroll back a little bit and talk about how I ended up in that place. I mean, I just by way of kind of introduction, I'm a journalist and a writer and a foreign correspondent on the Guardian newspaper in London. And before I went to Russia, in early 2007, I had covered all sorts of other states. For a long time, I was the Guardian's war and death guy. So I was in Baghdad, I was in Afghanistan. I wrote a piece in 2001 after 9/11 from northern Afghanistan describing the end of the Taliban, which now actually doesn't look quite so clever, but at the time felt like a historical moment. And so I'd sort of, I'd been around the Middle East, I'd been in South Asia, and I thought when I arrived in Moscow that Russia was a sort of semi-democracy. I mean, not Finland, not Switzerland, not Belgium, but moving sort of slowly, inexorably towards a more plural, more democratic sort of political path. And what I found was the reverse, that it was a kind of authoritarian state run by a group of hardline KGB officers, which was getting darker and darker, becoming domestically repressive. And there were two projects. There was the sort of Mafia state project, which is basically, Russia is a kleptocracy. It's all about, there's a lot of noisy patriotism going on, but it's all about stealing money. The people around Putin are billionaires, his KGB friends. He himself is probably, not formally, but informally the richest guy in the world. I mean, he could probably, buy much of this country and has bought much of London, where I'm from. So the mafia aspect is how the state is organized. So formally, it's a state with a government and bureaucracy, but actually the main thing that drives these people is stealing money and securing the money they've stolen. And the shadow state is about espionage, because at the same time, Russia is, I would argue, the world's foremost spy state. I mean, it's not a great power, despite its pretensions, but it has a well-developed, large network of intelligence officers, some of them military, some of them working in foreign intelligence, some of them either in the audience or around the corner. I mean, Helsinki has always been a big place for Russian espionage, both in Cold War times and today. And actually, if you are a Russian intelligence officer, then maybe put your hand up and we can talk later on, because you could be a source. I don't know.
Can you have a picture of the audience so we can kind of somehow prove it?
But I would say, loosely speaking, these are the kind of twin projects that drive 21st century Russia. One is stealing, corruption, and the other is kind of great power games, as if the sort of 70 years of liberal democracy never really happened, and we are back in some kind of Cold War II, Neo-Cold War.
Yeah. What would you say is their primary aim? Now, as you mentioned, like kleptocracy and stealing money and so on. But what would you say is what are they going for? Is it just like hauling up more dough, or is there something they're actually chasing after?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two projects. There's the kind of enrichment, the getting rich project, where actually money is sort of liquid power. You know, I've spent more than a decade looking at sort of the fortunes of Putin and people close to him, and it's interesting because Putin doesn't formally own anything. If you were to go to the bank next door and say, do you have an account in the name of Mr. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin? They would say, look, I'm terribly sorry, nothing in that name. It's all held through proxies, through oligarchs, through relatives, through sort of shadow people. But the point about that money is you can use it for sort of strategic projects. So you can host the World Cup, you can bribe FIFA, you can hire a former Finnish politician or a German chancellor or an Italian prime minister. Or you can use it for kind of private purposes. So you can build a palace on the Black Sea, you can have a yacht, or you can have 2 yachts, or even 5 yachts, and so on. And so the people at the top of the Russian state, it's like feudal. You remember Game of Thrones? It's a kind of feudal system where a few families at the top control assets, control huge sums of money. But also there is the espionage as well. And I would say that basically Putin's goal is to kind of weaken the West, and to weaken you guys, to weaken us.
Yes.
And also, I would say, to make us fight each other all the time.
Yes. So would it be so that by making West weaker and making us fight each other, would it be so that the aim and the goal in that it would be to sort of make Russia great again?
You stole my line, and
Sorry.
I'd stolen that line from someone else.
I wonder who.
Yeah, I mean you're right, and actually, it's funny, but there's a serious point there, which is that I would say that Putin has been more successful than the other guy, Donald Trump, in making Russia great again, because actually, economically, Russia is not a great power. I mean, there's no proper road between St. Petersburg next door and Moscow. You go to Russian villages and they're a kind of decaying zone of old ladies. And yet what Putin is very good at is projecting force and making other people afraid of him, because he does things that Western states would not do. I mean, he murders people. And not just in a kind of, let's do a drone strike kind of a way. He murders people he personally doesn't like. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. So I think he's been very successful at dividing European countries, exploiting weaknesses, and also exploiting the naivety of some people as to what Russia is up to.
Yes. Yeah, I would kind of, in my opinion, it would seem that like stupidity of certain people in the West would be something that has been quite successfully exploited by the Russians.
Yeah, I mean stupidity, but also greed. Yeah. And what my book is about, Shadow State, is it's not just saying here are sort of faraway villains, stealing money, doing bad things, repressing dissidents, locking up people like Alexei Navalny, murdering journalists, and so on, behaving autocratically. It's also, unfortunately, it's a sorry story of our corruption, of the fact that, I mean, I don't know if there are any lawyers in the audience, but leading Russian oligarchs have got Finnish passports. How did they get them? I mean, they buy sports teams, they buy stadiums, they buy businesses, and so on. And in my town in London, there is a whole group of people, lawyers, estate agents, peers, lords of the realm, who have been hired by Kremlin-connected interests, and who kind of facilitate massive money laundering and corruption. And you'll notice I'm not mentioning any names in the sentence, okay? No one is being accused. I'll talk to you privately afterwards if you want names.
I already found from the book, and when I now see you in person, you are quite passionate about this. We gonna talk more about the books and the stuff, what's going on. But what lead to this point? Why you are investigating this stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good question. I mean, passionate, engaged. I'm not sure, but I spent 4 years in Russia as a correspondent for The Guardian. It's a country I love. To be clear, the Russian trolls say that I'm a Russophobe, or sometimes I'm sometimes a pathological Russophobe. But that's not true, and I think you have to make a distinction between the government, which is dark and basically run by spies or former spies, and the people who, by and large, are wonderful, like everybody here, and stoical, and very often gifted. I mean, it's a great country with a great culture, great music, great theatre, great writing tradition. So all of that is true. But basically, what happened to me was that when I was there as a correspondent, I was pursuing themes that the Kremlin did not want me to investigate. So, for example, the murder of Alexander Litvinenko. I don't know if you remember that case, but the dissident who was killed in 2006 in London with a radioactive cup of tea. I mean, actually, this is a glass of water, but not entirely dissimilar.
Yes, and we opened it and we're watching it all the time.
You're watching it, okay. Well, I've already tried it, but you tried it first, right? So, okay, so you're still alive. Okay, so we're good. Okay. You know, asking a simple question when I was in Moscow, how much money does Vladimir Putin have? You know, good question, but not a question that actually people want you to ask. And so what happened to me is that we had a series of break-ins at our apartments by, I was told by the British Embassy in Moscow, by officers from the FSB, that's the main successor agency to the KGB dealing with domestic intelligence. And they put bugs in our apartment. We were told video as well, including in the bedroom, Marcus.
Yeah, if I remember right, you said in the book that you received some sort of intimate tips from them.
I did, yeah, on one occasion. I mean, it was, you know, I joke about it, but it was quite scary. We had two kind of small children, you know, at that time, and they would do things like we would come back when we were living on the 10th floor of an apartment block, discover the window next to my son's bed, who was 6 at the time, which we had locked, had been bust open, you know, with a big drop. So, you know, it was sinister, but it was kind of darkly amusing. And on one occasion, we came back from a holiday in Berlin to find a sex manual in Russian by the side of the bed. And the KGB FSB, I kid you not, had bookmarked it to page 132, which was a page about orgasms, how you have a better, more fulfilling orgasm. And I was sitting there thinking, what, can I swear, by the way, on this podcast or not? I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah. What the fuck are these guys trying to tell me? You know, have they picked up some kind of frequency issue? Is it, you know, that we're basically a bit conservative? I mean, what message are they trying to send? And the thing is, it's funny, but it's not funny because we had no private space for almost 4 years. But also, it's important because when this whole story, which has kind of rocked American politics like no other for 5 long years with Donald Trump. Did the Russians video Donald Trump when he was in Moscow for the Miss Universe beauty pageant in 2013? Well, you know, somewhere in their archive there is probably a tape of me. I suspect it's not very good, you know, but I imagine it exists somewhere. So, you know, if you are Donald Trump staying in the presidential suite of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, you can guarantee there will be a tape. And, you know, you have to ask yourself, did Donald Trump go to bed early that night with a cup of chamomile tea and a Nordic Noir thriller from Rosebud Bookshop?
He might have. He
might have. Or maybe he had a slightly more exotic experience. You know, I leave you, dear viewers, to decide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is a mystery that we.
But you know that explains my passion. I mean, because it wasn't, you know, I'd done war, I'd done death, I'd done Iraq, I'd done the Taliban, I'd done the fall of Baghdad, and somehow this was personal, directed at us, and also by implication directed at our kids, and that is something very hard to forget.
How did you became a journalist. What led to that?
How did I become a journalist? I started I was at Oxford. I read English literature at Oxford University some time ago. Now I'm actually quite an old guy. And I started doing the student newspaper. And it was terrifically good fun because the other student journalists, first of all, they were scruffy. I mean, they didn't have this handsome kind of hoodie wear that you have. I mean, you could be very scruffy, but they were clever. It seemed like a creative and fun profession to do. And I started off writing gossip columns about aspiring student journalists, student politicians at Oxford, thinking these guys are losers. Their views are so far right wing. They all love Margaret Thatcher. If you remember her,
yeah,
right?
We do.
They're never going anywhere. Anyway, the people I wrote gossip columns about as a student journalist now run the British government, unfortunately. I kind of met them there in their kind of, they were 19-year-olds wearing three-piece suits with handkerchiefs and watches from the 19th century, and I just thought they were a joke. And now they're in power.
It's kind of like...
It's not funny. I mean, why are you laughing? It's true, unfortunately.
I suppose this is one of those points where you sort of like can't really joke about anything as reality is making the jokes, and you can't really, and there's really no point in writing fiction when reality is writing it better.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something I've always kind of, I say again semi-seriously. I mean, I really believe that. I mean, I've done a few books now. I did a book about the murder of Alexander Litvinenko called A Very Expensive Poison. I mean, could you really believe two assassins flying from Moscow, putting a radioactive mini bomb in a dissident's tea and killing him in a horrible execution-style manner? I mean, it's unbelievable, but it happened. Same with Sergei Skripal. A washed-up former intelligence officer living quietly, doing the bingo, drinking with his friends in a pub, who comes back, touches his front door handle, and it's been smeared with Novichok, this terrible, deadly substance, two different assassins. And then also the massive operations around helping Donald Trump win the 2016 election. Now, look, we can talk forever about why he won, but Russia was certainly pushing him, and same with Brexit as well. So these are crazy, surreal stories. And I sort of think, I met the wonderful Denise earlier on, very successful novelist, and, part of me felt like saying, well done, and part of me felt like saying, look, no point in doing fiction because actually this stuff is so crazy. You don't need to make it up.
Well, if your book would be novel, nobody would read it because those happenings are so stupid and so clumsy. Nobody does a crime in a crime book like they do in Russia.
Yeah, that's true. Like the credibility would be like that would be lousy fiction from the credibility.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And I was trying to find an analogy, a comparison for how Russian spy agencies behave, how the GRU, Russian military intelligence, behave, and the image that came into my head in the end was a golem. Is it the same word in Finnish? Golem?
Yeah.
It's golem. Okay, a golem. Because you think, look, there's a golem coming down the road. It's really stupid. It's a golem. You can see it, etc. It's noisy, it's big, it draws attention to itself. And then the golem comes to your house or flat and smashes the roof in with a mighty fist. And then you think, not so funny. And that's the problem, and that actually, in the end, Putin doesn't care if his assassins get caught and exposed, because the message goes back. The message goes to the West that you are weak, we can deal with our traitors whenever we like, and the message goes home saying to people inside the Russian elite, if you betray me, if you betray the state, there will be a terrible price. Oh, and by the way, we will come for you when you're not expecting it.
Absolutely. Yes. Who would be these days? Who would be the people whose safety is compromised by the Russian government?
You mean inside Russia or outside Russia?
Actually, well, both inside and outside Russia. Who are the people who should be fearing for their lives at the moment?
Well, I mean, anyone who stands up to power in Russia. I mean, what's happened in recent months, really since Alexei Navalny came back from Berlin in January of this year, has been, I would say, I mean, other people in the audience may have a different view, but I'd say Russia has gone from soft autocracy to almost full-blown dictatorship, where any kind of protest against the regime is a crime. And many of the journalists I've worked with on investigations, Panama Papers, Pandora Papers, for The Guardian, Russian journalists, bright, brilliant, brave people, they have all fled recently. You know, they've all gone into exile. There's a huge wave of Russians who are going to the Baltics, they're going to Lithuania, they're going to Latvia, they're going to Estonia. Some are coming to Finland, who are emigres. They're exiles in the same way that I'm not on the same scale, but that white Russians were after the revolution 100 years ago. Yeah. And so, you know, it's depressing what's going on. Those people are at risk, not actually journalists like me. You know, it's actually Russians who pay the price, and sometimes their relatives pay the price. I mean, one Russian journalist I know who fled via Ukraine, whose father has now been arrested.
It's horrible.
I've been thinking, and one of the persons from our audience also wanted to ask you that how does your books affect your life? So do you consider yourself to be in a personal danger?
I always get this question, and thank you, whoever kind of mailed that one in. And it's a variety of the "why are you not dead" question. Basically, that's it. Why are you not dead? Essentially, is what it boils down to. And I think the answer is quite interesting. It's more interesting than you might imagine. And basically, the assumption is in Russia that all Western correspondents, particularly the British and American ones, are spies, that we are foreign spies. So that by day, I write articles for The Guardian website, which anybody can read, but by night, I get secret instructions from Boris Johnson communicated via a flower pot or a stone or, I don't know, a cloud or whatever, a cuckoo clock, I don't know what the fantasy is, you know, telling me to write nasty stuff about Vladimir Putin, you know. And the reason they think this is because during Cold War times, and actually to some extent today, Soviet journalists were spies. They were KGB. Mm-hmm. So the Itar test guy sitting in Helsinki, you know, writing about the workers' protests in Helsinki back in the 1960s, say actually was a KGB guy. Yeah. So it's about mirror thinking. So they assume that I am some kind of scruffy MI6 agent, like a kind of really cheap version of James Bond, but with no kind of kung fu, but with some literary ability. And why that is helpful to me is that there are rules for foreign spies that you can hound them, you can bug them, you can watch them with their wives, you know, in their flat. You can sort of threaten their children. But ultimately, the people who are really at risk are Russians. There's a different rule for Russians who oppose the state and who insult Putin personally. And we know what can happen to them.
Yeah.
By the way, Daniel Craig has quit the job, so I think I found you handsome, so maybe you are the next James Bond.
That's very kind, but unfortunately, I have actually met Daniel Craig, by the way.
No, you're the famous British I've ever met.
I had a cup of tea with him in his flat in New York, but anyway, but no one tweet that, please.
And you're both still alive.
But we're the same age, so unfortunately, I don't think that's going to work. It's got to be someone younger. It's got to be someone who can, you know, jump off buildings. I don't know. Apparently not a woman. It's got to be a guy, it seems. But anyway, we'll see. But it's not me, but thank you.
Okay. Tell us a bit about the process of doing the research for the project like this and then distilling the material into compact and exciting book.
Yeah, I mean, I try and what I try and do in my books. I mean, they're all non-fiction, as we discussed, but I try and take the techniques of thrillers and make it hugely readable. There is no point in writing an academic book about Russian politics if no one's going to read it, right? And actually, these crazy events, as I was saying, with assassins, with political sabotage, with intelligence officers roaming around Europe, I mean, the genre is thriller. So I use kind of thriller style, but it's all true. And I have sources, I have people I talk to. I've been doing this for a while. So sometimes people approach me, sometimes I approach them. Some people took off the record. A lot of, rich Russians in Moscow, when I was there, wouldn't talk to me. And when they flee into exile, they ring me up and they want me to write their memoir, or whatever. So no, I try and make the books exciting because, also two of my books have been made into movies, and one has been made into a hit play in London about the Litvinenko poisoning. Yeah. So I try and sort of think visually and write as if I'm John le Carré.
Yes. And the result is quite exciting, actually. So it's very, very, very much recommended reading. I suppose we should talk about Finland's relations with Russia. We share like 1,343.6 kilometers of border with Russia.
You've measured it.
Yes.
Okay.
I suppose one question would be that what's the prudent way for the Finnish government and authorities to both like maintain the cordial relations with Russia without like stooping into proper bootlickery?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, the thing is, I've been to Helsinki a few times before, and this time I've been here for about 2 hours, and I think it would be rather arrogant for me to lecture the Finnish government on what to do. So what I say is not just about Finland, but also about my own country, UK, and other European countries. And I think what Finland, what politicians here have to understand is that you are not dealing with a normal law-based state that is interested in mutual solutions to mutual problems. I mean, Putin would rather have lose-lose than win-win. And the way he thinks, the way he behaves, the way these Russian assassins are roaming around European Union countries, including Germany, including Helsinki, a lot of intelligence officers here. What you have to understand is that basically he sees Russia being at war, a sort of semi-war, a subterranean war, an under-the-carpet war with the West. And that's why he does these things. That's why he murders dissidents. That's why he interferes in other people's elections and so on. And he thinks the West does the same to him. So he is justified in bringing this war to Western countries. And so once you understand that, really, there's only so far that dialogue will get you. And what you need, if Russia misbehaves, you need hard consequences. And the only thing this regime cares about ultimately is money. So you need to de-visa Kremlin officials. You need to make, Finland a less attractive place for Russian oligarchs. And I would advise successful sort of Finnish politicians that are approaching retirement age who are moving on to not get a job with a Russian corporation or conglomerate or Nord Stream 2 or whatever, because ultimately you're just being used for soft power purposes by Moscow.
Yeah. I'll be a bit more candid now. You say that you would not want to preach to the Finnish politicians or tell them what to do. But I'm going to ask you now that if Luke Harding was the president or the prime minister of Finland, and there's this hot potato now in Finland, should we join the NATO or not? What would Luke Harding do?
Would President Luke Harding join NATO or not? I mean, I think it's tricky, but I think ultimately you have to start from the point of view that Finland is sovereign. You are a sovereign nation, and I don't mean that in any kind of populist Viktor Orban kind of a way, but essentially it's for the Finnish electorate to change political parties. When one politician becomes unpopular, you vote in another one. I mean, that's the difference between Finland and Russia. I mean, Russia has had one leader for a very long time, 2 decades, and probably another decade to come. And Finland, well, you've had several, right? I mean, which is good and healthy. So I think on NATO, I think it has to be a decision for the Finnish electorate. I mean, if there is pressure to have a referendum, I mean, generally, I'm not a fan of referendum. I'm not a fan of Brexit.
Especially after the last referendum guys had.
You know, that was a disaster, and also I write about the way that Russia was pushing for Brexit in shadow state. But I think ultimately it has to be a decision for the Finnish people, and the danger is attempts to influence from outside, and obviously Russia is vehemently opposed to the idea of Finland joining NATO, and you can guarantee if that issue gets hotter and hotter, there'll be more and more interference from the Kremlin side to try and stop that from happening, because Putin regards NATO with visceral hatred. It's part of his kind of Soviet KGB brain. He thinks NATO is an implacable, forever enemy. And if Finland is bold enough or foolish enough to join NATO, then you will be a bigger enemy than you are today.
If we do that, are we bold or foolish?
Well, I mean, you know, it's a tricky question. I mean, if I were sitting in the Baltics, for example, I mean, you know, they've joined already, right? But for them, it's what we call in English a no-brainer. You know, you're a small country. You need security guarantees. You know, for half of the 20th century, you didn't exist because you were basically occupied and run by a kind of colonial power in Moscow. Whereas, you know, Finland has a different, more sensitive history where for a long time during the Cold War you had to coexist. But I think ultimately Finland has to jump with the European Union, and I don't know. I mean, ask me again in a year's time.
All right, we will. I'm sure we will. All right.
I mean, having been deported from Russia in 2011, it would be a bit foolish to be deported from Helsinki in 2021. But, you know where to find me.
How about the average Finn? Is there something that we should be doing or avoiding in relation to Russia? And by Russia here, I don't mean Russian people or Russian culture, but the Russian influence.
I mean, you know, I just go back briefly to the point I made before that Russia itself is a great country. I mean, I would urge Finns to go next door, to go to St. Petersburg, go to the Hermitage, go around the Russian Gallery. I mean, it's a glorious. I'm actually banned from Russia. I'm on a blacklist. I can't go there. But as well as the people, the thing I miss most is the art. Yeah. There's kind of wonderful 19th century art in, say, the Tretyakov Gallery in Moscow, which you cannot see anywhere else. So, connect with people, connect with culture.
Yes.
But do not be wide-eyed about the nature of the government and what it is trying to do on the European playing field.
Yeah, that's something that I was thinking earlier on when you told about your motives of writing about Russia. I was kind of thinking that, gosh, he's doing it actually for the love of Russia and for the love of Russian culture and the Russian people.
Yeah. I mean, it was, I've been. Oh dear, that wasn't the KGB. That was my elbow. But I've been all over the world. You know, I've done. Actually, I haven't really reported from Latin America or North America, but otherwise I've reported from kind of a lot of countries in my career. But Russia was the most intellectually exciting place because, the weather is bad. It is kind of faintly oppressive, and the architecture is big and brutalist. But there's this wonderful culture. It's almost like being a student. You make Russian friends. And you find yourself in middle age, staying up until 2 a.m, talking about the meaning of meaning, in a way that probably you don't necessarily do in London. I mean, there's that sort of tradition is still very much alive, and also, life doesn't really count for anything there. People get poisoned. Deputy prime ministers get shot dead outside the Kremlin. I'm talking about Boris Nemtsov, whom I knew, was killed in 2015. Life is cheap. The colors are bigger and they are bolder and they're more vivid and they're more exciting, in a way, darkly exciting. And I feel, solidarity with, Alexei Navalny I knew pretty well. I met him, we corresponded by email. I know his people, his colleagues in exile pretty well. These are brave people. These are heroic people. These are people who will be remembered by history, even if their attempts to change Russia in the end come to nothing. A bit like the Decembrists, the intellectuals in St. Petersburg who revolted in the 1820s against the Tsar and were exiled into Siberia. I think it's unlikely they will succeed, but you have to salute their bravery, and I hope one time I'll be able to go back to maybe from Helsinki to St. Petersburg or Moscow, perhaps on my Zimmer frame, to see a kind of post-Putin Russia. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully.
As you maybe you didn't get it yet, but once again, Helsinki and Finland has actually a big part of the book. But what is your relationship to Finland and Helsinki?
Basically, Finns are cool. That's my impression. I went to an international sixth form college in Wales. In the late 1980s, various people were there, including the current King of Holland, who was in the year above me. But there were a lot of Finns and a lot of Scandinavians who were basically popular. They drank a lot. Am I allowed to say that?
You are.
Yeah.
Okay.
We know. We do.
On one occasion, I had to pick my Swedish-speaking Finnish teacher off the sofa. And that was kind of my introduction to Finland. And then I started writing. Actually, I came via Finland when I was going on holidays to Thailand, but that doesn't really count. But when I was writing books about Russia, I've come here, I think, more than any other country, because I think the closer you are to Russia, the more you understand it, you're interested in it, you feel some empathy and some fear as well. So it's a great country, it's full of cool people, and I'm going to a bar around the corner to see my Finnish friends soon after this event.
Do you like sauna?
That's booked for tomorrow. No, it really is. That's not a joke.
We know.
All right.
I'm sorry. I'm hitting all the cliches here, aren't I? I mean, I should have said something else.
No.
We talk about lots of cliches in the Nordic Noir.
Yes. Yeah. If our show is called Nordic Noir Finland, we can't really avoid cliches, as the kind of genre is loaded with them. I suppose in the end you might have some free time. What do you do with the little free time you get?
Free time. What do? I cycle a little bit. I mean, it's been a year, 2 years almost of pandemic and disaster and doom and mask wearing, and actually I had. You were coughing there, weren't you? What was that? Was that?
I'm okay.
Do you need to leave the stage?
It's his water.
I had COVID last year, and for quite a few months, then kind of recovered. And the sort of my kind of new pleasure is sort of cycling in the English countryside, actually. And there's a medieval forest quite close to where I live, with deer. Descended from the original 12th century herd. And it's quite nice to be local, to find a green space and to find a little bit of peace.
Yes.
This is the question we have asked to every guest in our show. And I have to say that I'm most curious about you, at this time at least. What is your Christmas gift recommendation as a book for our listeners? It cannot be your book.
Yeah.
That's the obvious choice.
You know what? That's a really good question. And actually, I do have an answer for you, although I don't know if it's published in Finnish yet. But I just reviewed last weekend for The Observer, the sister newspaper to The Guardian, a book by a Albanian woman called Leah Yipi, YPI, and it's called Free, Coming of Age at the End of History. And it sounds kind of terrible and unreadable. In fact, it's completely brilliant, and one of the best books I've read this year, non-fiction books. It's funny, hilarious, in fact. It's her account of growing up in communist Albania in the 1980s. The daughter of intellectuals in a provincial Albanian city with a family secret. And she was a kind of junior pioneer who loved Enver Hoxha, the Albanian leader, who on one occasion, age 11, hugged the statue of Stalin in the municipal park, only to hear a pro-democracy demonstration coming around the corner with people shouting, "Freedom, freedom, freedom." And it's basically, it's a sort of study in, it's a personal story, but it's all about how Albania sort of thought it'd become free, you know, got rid of the communist shackles, and in fact, within a few years, had civil war, gangsterism, pyramid schemes, and how the liberal dream died. So it's personal, it's political, it's historical, and it's very, very, very funny. So I think, you know, it's a great book, and it's a quick read as well. It's like my book. You just rush through it.
It'll absolutely be going to my to-read list at least. It's sort of every time there's a book about like the end of communism and great expectation and how everything goes south from there. They tend to be quite great.
But just finally on that, I mean, this woman is a bit of a genius. I mean, she spoke French with her grandmother. It turns out that they were kind of aristocrats, but she didn't know this was all kept secret from her. But what's interesting is she is now a professor of political theory at LSE in London, and she teaches Marx. So you know, her parents were anti-Marxist, suppressed by the regime, and she's now gone full circle and saying neoliberalism is not for us. We need to go back to some kind of socialism or egalitarianism of the kind, you know, we had before.
All right.
So history moving in circles rather than moving in straight lines.
Absolutely, that's what it does.
Good tip, and we're gonna gather all these guests' tips into our special episode before the Christmas, and there will be, of course, Luke's, there will be Dennis and Jens Lapidus, and everybody who has recommended book. There will be in a one episode. You can have your favorite, I will have mine, and so those will be gathered. But now it's time to thank you, and it was very interesting. It was delightful, and even I don't say dangerous, but exciting. Jännittävä, exciting.
It's not always when you have a great laugh with such serious matters. So it's
thank you. I mean, it's been great fun, but it's the sort of mood, it's the tone of our age, it's dark comedy, I think. Otherwise, we'll all go crazy. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke Harding. Ja hyvää vuorokauden ja jatkoa kaikille kotikatsomoissa ja täällä.
Kiitoksia. Ollaan kuulolla.